Welcome to the show. This week we feature the second part of our special series with Siddharth Chatterjee, the UN Resident Coordinator in Kenya, as we look into the SDGs and the role of the private sector. Let's get straight to the conversation. And I want to come to Sanda because your hand has been up. And Sanda, I want you to take the point forward. How on earth does Safaricom achieve what it achieves, where it achieves it, in what seemingly is an impossible environment? So how do you guys do it?
Okay, wasn't prepared for that one. But
we really want the answer to that one.
But let me pick up from what the gentleman said about young people, because I think it would be important for Sid to land a point about what does employment look like for youth who's going to be globally competitive. Because I think all of the structures that we have around, be it Youth Fund, we've talked about the need to modernize and mechanize our agriculture, still keep us pretty much at the same place. So I think if we're going to talk about opportunities for young people, youth, we need to think very futuristic, because there's no point developing skills that will keep you where today is. Global competition is such that people are working online. So, we're preparing kids for digital online jobs, etc. Because if we keep on with the trajectory that we are, I don't think we'll get to the place where that million youth need to get to. I mean, Sid came to a report launch of ours a couple of months ago and came up with an interesting statistic around the million young people. And his estimation was we would therefore need 5 companies the size of Safaricom, present discussions notwithstanding, 5 companies the size of Safaricom to absorb that 1 million youth. So I think we really need to look at these numbers and make sense around it. Where do employment opportunities exist for young people? Because they don't necessarily exist in the private sector. I mean, even Vimal himself, I'm sure we don't have the opportunity to absorb that 1 million people. So, what interesting mechanisms and opportunities can we look at?
Okay, the lady over here.
My name is Jerusha, and I'm a lecturer. Okay,
Thank you.
I'm a lecturer at Strathmore Law School. And I've been listening to the different presentations that are being made with regard to the economy. And what I hear from the good doctor is about going to scale, so industrial economy. But what I hear from Sanda, if you'll let me call you that, is that the economy is moving past an industrial one to, for instance, you mentioned a connection economy. So, and I know in other continents, for instance, the economy moved past purely industrial application. So the question is, do you think that we still have the capacity for scale, or should we move towards the knowledge that we're moving very fast towards a connection economy, and maybe we will have an economy that will be more specialized beyond that point? Because, for instance, my economy as a teacher is that I'm in the knowledge economy. So I think also have to move to the connection economy.
I would say one thing. We must now instill and perhaps have it by legislation in Parliament, 2 things. Number one, on the issue of equality, Sub-Saharan Africa, as I mentioned, $95 billion of lost revenue because of inequality. Just because of gender inequality. So we need to make sure that our women get freed up to join the workforce, achieve their full human potential. And the second issue is where we need strong legislation is to make sure that there is dignity in labor. So whether you're a plumber, mason, woodworker, whatever, that word, you remember, which we used to learn in social sciences as children on dignity of labor, that's why you find people in, I met a minister who was a deputy foreign minister in Norway who started his life as a plumber. So, we should be able to respect that vocation, and I think that is a messaging that needs to come through from civic education and on all those things. 2 crucial aspects, because without that, you will have a youth bulge, where there is a high-tech bulge, and then there's a low-tech bulge, and nothing in between.
Right.
And that in between is where the biggest number of jobs are also going to be.
My name is Nyawira Gitaka, and yes, I am the mushroom lady. So why I love mushrooms? Because I'm growing a superfood out of agricultural waste. I'll tell you about my story. Very good, you mentioned the people from the office of the president. There is no private company in Kenya that is producing mushroom spawn. I can't grow shiitake because the spawn the government is giving me is failing. That has been my journey, just something very small. 23 counties in Kenya are facing, starvation. Mushrooms I can produce with 70% efficiency from agricultural waste. I have to watch videos on YouTube. I had to talk to a farmer in Netherlands, language barrier, to try and get me a book he wrote because I want the knowledge. I don't want money. I am trying to learn how to produce spawn. I want to replicate mushroom growing in Turkana using solar technology. I need an engineer to transform a crude oil drum so that I can reduce the heat loss and make it very practical for a woman in Turkana. This is something a 13-year-old girl can do without interfering with her education.
Wow.
Okay? So that is what I'm going through. So my question is for the government. Mushrooms are under horticulture. What have you invested in the past 20 years? If you go to JKUAT, Kirdi, what technology are they using to produce spawn? Right. For I cannot import biological material because it's me, I'm not the government. So this is, yeah. So
yes.
this is exactly what I'm passionate about. I want practical solutions.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Weather from Nairobi Securities Exchange. Mine is just a quick comment, and I wanted to say that we cannot overlook the fact that the private sector exists to generate revenues. So the issue of incentivizing these companies is paramount. We have 65 listed companies at the exchange today. Only 9 of them give triple bottom line reporting on environmental, social, and corporate governance. I am yet to see a board that puts in sustainability in the agenda of the board meeting. Right. It is always, how do we drive revenue? So we might sit here and say that incentives are not important, but there is no CEO who is given a job to say, build this sustainable company. They're told, generate revenues, then the revenues you generate we can use to build sustainability. So the private sector exists to generate revenue. We have to accept it. So we need to drive the business case for them. We have 65 listed companies, as I mentioned, and only 3 female CEOs. Only 3 of the 65 companies. And it's not because they don't know that women can do this, but you need to build a business case. So for me, I think it's incentivizing, and maybe an example for NSE is partnerships do work. Right. We work closely with UN Global Compact. We became a member of them. We have signed on to the Women Empowerment Principles, and we are hoping to lead by example. So we might always sit here and say, what more can the private sector do? But they exist to build revenues. So how do we link the two? Revenue generation and sustainability.
Absolutely. So take the lady.
My name is Karen Basia from Safaricom, and mine is just a quick comment to say that there are other 16 goals other than partnership that still offer great opportunities for private sector. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of opportunities that private sector can tap into from goal 1 to 16 other than partnerships.
Thank you so much. Sid, you can start.
So for what the United Nations can really do is what we did in the northeastern counties together with the national government and the county governments. Be a catalyst, be a provider of technical assistance, be a provider of ideas, be a provider of the best human capital that can be sourced from anywhere in the world to make it all happen. Let me give you one outcome. Why was I in Davos? One of the outcomes that has taken place is, as we speak, the Cabinet Secretary of Health, in the office of the DP, the Deputy President and the President, there's a discussion ongoing on the establishment of an SDG platform, which will be co-chaired by the UN and the government of Kenya. And the purpose of this SDG platform is to look at how do we achieve, while we are focusing on the Sustainable Development Goal number 3, which is about universal health and healthy lives, all other SDGs actually link into it. Infrastructure links into it. Human capital links into it. Ending poverty, improved education, getting better skills, equality, gender links into it. So I think everything else comes into this. What we need to do is actually fast forward and go on to unleash the juggernaut of primary healthcare, that every Kenyan, regardless of stature, is able to access quality healthcare, and there is no stunting. Stunting is an issue because you have a large number of young people that join the workforce that are unemployable because of cognitive deficiencies, because of the first 1,000 days is when those nutritional micronutrients, if they don't kick in, their mind is, there is this thing. And second thing, I think the president of this country made a very remarkable point once. He said, youth unemployment is an existentialist threat not only to Africa but to Kenya. And I think the private sector needs to take serious note of that.
Right.
When he said that, there was a point in it. When you have large numbers of young people unemployed, despondent, angry, seeing inequity, seeing an increasingly expanding Gini coefficient, what do you expect? You will start to see social instability. So it's also in the interest of the private sector to make sure that they are part of that social dynamic where they are seeing social stability, social dynamism, better economic opportunities, expansion of markets, and more employment. That is what will also leapfrog the economy. And as I said, Kenya is at an inflection point of takeoff. It is at the best possible point, and I wrote a piece in the Huffington Post recently, and I said, actually, Kenya can lead the way on universal health coverage in Africa. And trust me, I'm going to be proved right.
Wow. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a stark reality that Kenya has survived many challenges. But as we've heard, if we do not do things the right way, we have huge risks that we face. Chairman of the Brand Kenya board, businessman Kiski Ruby, first of all, let's congratulate you for the visionary 2 Rivers that has just launched. So well done on that. And please share your perspectives.
Thank you. I like to ask, why do you think the banks abandoned agriculture as an industry to support?
Okay.
In the past, there was a certain percentage of any lending in a bank they had to give to the agriculture sector. And I think we need to demand it. We need to go back there. I'm in banking. I own a small bank. You need to push me to make sure we lend to the mushroom lady and others like that.
Okay, thank you. So,
But
yes.
I like to say that we don't have to live in perennial famine. We need to allow free marketing, pricing of certain commodities, because certain time you can produce maize at a certain price, but you don't control the cost of fertilizer, equipments like tractors, diesel, but the only person controlled is the farmer. He's told you sell your maize at 3,000 bob. Maybe it cost him 3,500 bob to produce. Why you want a very poor man to finance the rich guys?
Thank you, Chris.
We need to be able to allow agriculture to survive, to thrive, because this is where we can have an absorption of a lot of our people. And the young people are starting to take agriculture seriously. So we do need to support it. And we need the media, who have never seen a smallholder somewhere, to start visiting the rural areas and making stories about the success of farmers.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
Thank you. I think there's a comment and a question. I believe that private sector, development agencies, government, everybody has been working in silos before this. The partnerships haven't really been effective. I think this is where everybody tries to say, how do I have issues around this? Today, if we take government, and if you want to do this mega projects you talk about, even in Turkana, or even take our new agriculture project where we got 1 million acres or hectares around the Tana Galana. And if you wanted to do that today, put government into place. You got Ministry of Agriculture, you got Ministry of Water, you got Ministry of Trade, and they don't talk to each other. They're all in silos. With due respect to government, sorry about this, but that's a fact today. They don't speak in one voice, and really, if that project was to be done, it is not rocket science. We could actually start becoming food self-sufficient without any rain required. I'm just saying, this is where now we talk about it. And again, with due respect to UN or every development agency, they also have their own silos, and they're all working for their own mission and getting things done. These partnerships we talk about, there's a lot of NATO. NATO means no action, talk only. There's a lot of talk. And really, when we come to implementation and say, fine, we want to get this done, you put in the competencies together, you put in the funding together, there's some funding required for things that private sector may not be able to afford. And this is where the partnerships are required. Sid, my question is to you, is there a paradigm shift within the development agencies? Are you able to be a focal point? Are they able to be focal point? Because right now you just get, oh, Israeli government giving this much money, German government giving this much money, and they're all for their own guys to get jobs or to create their own sales of pumps or whatever it is. So I'm just saying, it's time for partnerships. It's important. I think Kenyans also require it. And agriculture, when you talk about agribusiness, you need three things: water management, nutrients, and really sun all the time. If you manage these three, you got agriculture working. And the flower industry has shown it. The horticulture can show it. Everybody can produce. But these three things we manage disjointedly.
Thank you. Sid, Chris was asking about banks lending to farmers, He was also speaking about why are we putting controls on the price that the farmer can sell at, and yet we're not controlling anything else from the farmer. We're not providing subsidies.
In economics, there's a simple principle. You want people to do something, you incentivize it. You don't want them to do it, you tax it. Simple. And I think the same applies at a macro level. You want banks to lend to farmers, then you incentivize it. You need to make sure that the farmers are fleet up and are able to sell their goods and produce, have access to the best technology and all those things. When Vimal said it's not rocket science, it isn't. It's everything is. When I saw that piece in Turkana, small though it was, it's just a matter, as I said, it's a matter of our imagination about taking it to scale. But it is about leadership of government. That's why I gave you an example of the economies of South Korea, Nigeria, India, and Brazil. And why did South Korea take off? It is because the government pushed at it. You need the authority, you need the propulsion, you need the enabling space that is needed to do it. So government is important for that. Government should not mix up its role in delivery. That's when things begin to fall apart. For example, government going and delivering all the services. That's not what it should be doing. It should be providing the regulatory framework. It should be providing the oversight, incentivizing it, and letting the private sector flourish. Ladies and gentlemen, you're lucky in this country. I wish I could clone half your private sector and half your government ministers and half your CEOs and take them back to India. Probably my country would also be at a takeoff point by now. Right now, you are at that inflection point where you can take it forward. You've got everything which is going for you. Yes. And that is why right now, as we speak, the momentum needs to pick up. And those investments in education and skills, gender equality, employment generation is going to be crucial.
Yes, the role of small business doesn't necessarily need infrastructure. You can start, you can have an impact. The other young man said there are these cartels, and they make it very difficult to do things, to find a space,
I was at an event where the president of Kenya hosted on corruption and accountability. Fascinating, it was in the public domain, everybody could see it and all that. I think Kenya should take advantage of its M-Pesa system and all its cashless systems. If you are caught by a policeman on the road, you can actually start doing away with petty corruption. You pay your fine with M-Pesa. And if you pay it a little late, you pay it accordingly. You start doing major transactions on M-Pesa. Lift that 70,000 shilling cap and take it to millions of shilling. Incentivize M-Pesa payments. The opportunity, the amount of money that is actually in circulation in Kenya alone, please don't underestimate it. When I gave you a figure that Kenya can generate 1 billion Kenya shillings per day to support its health sector, that was a very, very conservative figure. I'm saying this, having discussed this with some of the key brains in economists who've been outside. I'm sure we can work that system in. And once government starts to put in money, you'll find the way the private sector will also come into the game. But we have to incentivize the private sector to get into this game.
Has there been a paradigm shift in the way that development world?
When I see the role of the UN, and I can see ourselves when I came back from Davos and before going to Davos to Kigali and all that, I can see the UN playing a central role. It's been in this country since 1963, and it will continue to be here till such time Kenya becomes a high-income growth country, and then the UN office will become a fundraising office, taking money from Kenya and giving it to some other countries. But the point is that right now, it is a perfect partnership because the UN has many skills and talent that it can bring to the country in terms of that neutral space, in terms of that non-judgmental space, in terms of the technological space, and in terms of helping weave all these partnerships of the private sector, of the government, of civil society. Because, ladies and gentlemen, without strong civil society, you're talking about the democratic space, that space will get limited. Without strong civil society, you won't get proper implementation done in many of the hard-to-reach sort of places. The private sector needs them because that's where your manpower, your trained manpower also is. So it's all a state of economic interdependence. Everything is related to one another. And the government needs prosperous young people, an economy which is thriving, because that's where its taxes will come from. That's how it will be able to provide all its basic and public services. So we are all interlinked. I just think with a population of 45 million, you can do it much faster than my country with a population of 1.4 billion.
Right.
And we have the same median age, by the way. India's median age and Kenya's median age is exactly the same, 18.
So many similarities between India and Kenya. Fascinating. I want to bring it to the question. I'm not going to take another question from you, but I'm going to end it on your question. He asked already. No, he already asked it. Don't give him back the mic. It's a comment, a very quick comment then.
Thank you so much, Julie. You see, when Chris Kirubi stood to speak about farming in rural areas, I felt touched. So I'm a youth currently working with a startup organization called One Acre Fund. So what we are currently doing is we are looking for smallholder farmers in the rural areas who have at least a 1 acre piece of land, and we are nurturing them on how they can come up with the potential in that 1 acre piece of land. How can they produce food to sustain their families? So I'm happy, sir, that I am a youth in the right path, and we just confirmed that. And I think we have so much success stories that we have seen and witnessed with the farmers there before. So it's an idea that is already out in the market, and it's working. And I'm asking more youth to join me in the quest to empower smallholder farmers, and at the same time, creating employment for the youth.
We end with a final question for you, Sid, and it was his question. I may not completely agree with his perspective, but as a young African, a young Kenyan, he's saying Africa, you know, it's the struggling young democracies. We haven't gotten there yet. How do we make our institutions stronger? How do we ensure we have standards, processes, rules in place that we respect and that we are able to hold ourselves accountable? Because if we're going to implement, it's got to boil back down to that. So let's finish on that.
Governance is a crucial aspect of it, and governance at every level, from the national government to the county level down to the to every level. Incentivize governance to get the best talent pool to go into government, get the best talent pool to get into the bureaucratic space, so that they're able to deliver those sorts of programs. But then, at one point that is critical, is for the governments to embrace the relationships and partnerships that it already has in the country, because that is what will get the engines rolling. I think the timing of devolution has been perfect, because devolution is allowing and holding a county governor responsible to his county in terms of what he or she is delivering or not delivering. And I think that is going to be a crucial part of it. Finally, I think today the voices that you have in social media, this is the second largest social media footprint in Africa. The voices that you can actually amplify, rather than print, you can actually get to the remotest county through a couple of tweets. I mean, when Julie sends out a tweet, I think, not only do 500 or 600,000 followers that you have, but then it gets amplified to 10 million people. The issue is, how do we make sure that we have relevant messaging, the relevant process of inclusion, the value systems of rights, inclusion, dignity? Those are crucial aspects of human development. And I think that has to be central to a nation's growth. So the socio-economic development of a nation state has to be tempered by overcoming certain cultural barriers such as traditional harmful practices, cultural barriers such as keeping women as an underdog in a family, cultural barriers such as, thriving of inequality, cultural barriers that divides us in terms of our race, tribes, clans. So I think those are the things that we need to overcome, and that comes when there's strong leadership. That comes when society starts to believe that, look, we have a collective space to grow and evolve as a nation state. Kenya is at that place. I can see it as an outsider. I say this with confidence. I've been working here since 2014. The difference I'm seeing, the trajectory that I'm seeing in some of the most hard-to-reach, difficult counties, where we've actually seen a drop in violence, for example, in places like Marsabit, where the president went and signed a cross-border agreement with the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. I believe those places will become hubs of economic activity, which everybody will benefit from. So I think, it was I think it's from a perspective of where we can take Kenya and the vision of 2030, which is such a beautifully articulated vision. I think we all have a stake in seeing the success of Vision 2030.